morning. This lesson is for April the 8th. And before I begin, I would like to wish Caleb a happy birthday. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, dear Caleb. Happy birthday to you. I hope you have a great day, buddy. I know it's kind of a bummer to be celebrating it in this quarantine, but maybe when it's all over, you can have a huge celebration to celebrate your birthday. And I'm sorry I can't give you your favorite candy bar, but I do have it written down, and if I see you again, I can give it to you then, or like I told Mac yesterday, I could just send you $1 and you guys can get your own candy bar. And I think Rihanna's having a birthday coming up this month too. A lot of April birthdays, a lot of quarantine birthdays. We have 3 in my family. My mom, my son, and my brother-in-law all are April birthdays. So anyway, I just hope you have a great day. We are going to finish discussing the Yamato period, and then we'll go on to another clan next. But remember, Japanese people in the beginning, and today's page, is only page 283, just one page. So if you haven't read page 283 right now, go ahead and pause this and then go ahead and read. It won't take you that long. All right, so assuming that you read, I told you yesterday on our Zoom meeting that I was going to put a shout out to somebody, and you were supposed to remind me, send a remind or an email or something that you got this message because you watched the video. And that person is Nolan and Zane, both of you. So hopefully you guys are watching this and you will send me and say, I heard my name. Anyway, so here we go. We're going to finish the Yamato period, and then we're going to talk about something else. But remember, I said that Japan got a lot of its influences from what 2 countries? Remember? Well, the one country they sent ambassadors to, which was China. Speaking of China, I added an extra video in your 6th grade section that says the history of Japan. It's like kind of like one of those little cartoons that I showed in class. So if you have time, I know you have a lot of time and a lot of you are bored, go ahead and watch that because it kind of reiterates what I've taught, and it kind of gives you more of a picture of how the Japanese sent ambassadors. Remember, an ambassador is someone that represents your country and goes to another country to learn something of it or to just be there. A lot of times we have what we call the U.S. Embassy in different countries around the world, and it's kind of like U.S. territory for people who are in a foreign country. So if I was in, maybe I was in Afghanistan and I needed safety from being, kidnapped from people or if I felt fear for my life, I could go and with my passport get into the U.S. Embassy, and that's considered U.S. foreign land, so they can't come in. And the ambassador usually lives there and works there and helps people they live at that country. Anyway, so the Japanese sent ambassadors to China to learn, and they got a lot of ideas from their religion. They got ideas from the writing and the culture, and maybe even some of the food. So that's why I think Japanese and Chinese food is very similar. And oops, I just went to a different class. Here we go. Very similar in what they eat, okay, or in how they dress. They both wear the silk robes, although they call it differently, okay? Different. All right, so one of the things that Japanese adapted from China was calligraphy. Remember the really pretty writing? They we do calligraphy sometimes. If you're getting a gift, a certificate or something, they'll do it in fancy writing. It's a skill, and some people can do it and some people not so much. But just like we learn cursive, these kids learn calligraphy, and this was something that was taken from the Chinese too, many, many centuries before. And I'm also going to put a link about the guy who invented calligraphy. His name was Wang Zhiqi. Not sure if I'm pronouncing that right. I kind of tried to look it up, but they didn't have a definition. So I'm just going by what their other words, how they say their other words. Anyway, so the Japanese, he was the father of this art form, and the Japanese adapted it as well. And if you can see, it says writing and calligraphy. There's a little boy learning how to write. Now there's different types of calligraphy. One is style is called kaisho. The writing in Japan, they call it the shodo. They call it the shodo. And so they call one form, one style is kaisho, which means correct writing. Another one, gaisho, which means traveling writing. And then the third is sosho, means grass writing. So how would you like to learn all three different types of writing in your class? Okay, so if you've read, you look at the definitions below. You have Takai reforms, which is a series of changes in the Japanese political and economic structure around AD 645, known as the Great Change. And then the art of fine writing, and then the Wang Zhiqi, which is the Chinese calligrapher. Now, one of the things that's going to change in Japan is the style of government, and they're going to pretty soon not have these clans anymore, and they're going to go with a more modern government. All right, so we talked about religion and the Buddhist missionaries that were sent from China were sent to Japan, and they were very influential on the Japanese people. So the Japanese people adapted the Chinese religion, Buddhism. Japanese also had another religion. Do you remember what that was called? Shintoism, right? Oops, almost dropped that. Shintoism, all right? And so how did the Buddhist missionaries influence Japan? Well, they taught the Japanese how to read and write Chinese. That was in your book. And they studied Chinese literature. They created the Chinese art style, and they bought customs in their styles of clothing. I had already mentioned that. Very similar in the way they dress and the way they eat too. All right, so we did, hopefully you read the writing and calligraphy, because I'm going to ask you questions on that section, okay? So what is calligraphy? It's a form of art. Beautiful. Some people do it really, really nicely. I know I used to want to learn, never did, but I'm impressed at people that can actually do it well. What are three types of shodo? We already talked about shodo and what was the purpose for each style. I mentioned those three already, but just as a review, kaisho is a formal block style. It's used in publications in Japan, like newspapers and books and articles and things like that. Gaisho is used by students to write notes. And I don't mean write notes to each other. I mean write notes like in class. And then shosho is a flowing cursive style used in formal Japanese calligraphy. Okay, so look at the guiding question, and I want to discuss how Americans write and the difference between a Japanese? Think about it. What's similar and what's different? Well, there are different ways that Americans write. We can print. A lot of us print. I know that we do cursive. Cursive is going out of style in most of the public schools. Hopefully you'll continue learning cursive because it's very important. There are going to be documents that you won't be able to read years from now. And then various calligraphy styles, people that do calligraphy these days. But the Japanese use different types of calligraphy symbols to write for different purposes. They have a purpose for each thing. Thankfully, we don't have to do that. And then it says, look at the image right there where it says this print shows a woman using a shuttle and a loom to make material. How does she operate the loom? What kind of thread she might be using? So, how is she operating the loom? Amanda, another shout out. With her foot, kind of like doing a car, or kind of like if someone sews, if you're using a sewing machine, you're going to use your foot as the pedal to make the stitching go. And then the thread may have been made of coarse silk, China grass, or cotton. Those are different things. Now, a little bit more, few more questions, and then we're going to be done for today. How did the Yamato Emperor keep control of the government? Sorry, I had an itch. So he chose people from the most powerful families to help him govern the clan. Okay, this is what the emperor did. But what motivated the leaders in Japan to make a political and economic change? The Japanese leaders wanted to weaken the influences of the clan chieftains, the people who were in charge. What did leaders model government changes after? The centralized Chinese government, and a lot of their influence, remember, is they wanted to train their officials. So their officials were people who went to college. They were smart, and they thought, because sometimes you can have a good emperor and then it's passed on to their son, but their son could be like a ditz, and don't care about anything and don't know about anything. And so it kind of weakens the government. If you don't have a strong leader, it could be weakening the government too, or the country. And so they wanted to train these officials to be smart and to be able to lead the country and progress it to the Western way of life. Okay, and I'm talking about being modernized and things like that. Okay, and how did establishing a civil service exam weaken the influences of the clan chieftain? Well, I just mentioned this because people who were trained were able to pass the tests and get a better job that way. And what did the leaders of Japan do to keep tax money out of the hands of the chieftains? They put new laws in place. The chieftains were no longer allowed to collect taxes. The government collected the taxes for the emperor, kind of like the IRS does with us. Okay, so I'm going to conclude this by one of the questions. It says, how does Shintoism, on the bottom, contrast with biblical truth? We have done this a lot with all these other countries. So if you know the biblical truth about it, you're going to only have to worry about Shintoism. So remember, Shintoism teaches that what's wrong with the world is that we are out of harmony with nature, right? Remember that? And that a connection with the kami brings prosperity and harmony in this life. It's like a lot of people that they do with the meditation and, you know, karma and the yoga and the belief that we have to be one, okay? Buddhism, we're going to learn about that. He's called the Enlightened One. It's another thing with harmony in nature. And so people start worshiping creation rather than the Creator. And as Christians, our responsibility, or actually the only thing that's required of us, is that we believe that Jesus died on the cross, that he is the only one that can save us from our sins. We don't have to worship rocks and dogs and cats, and although my cat acts like she needs to be worshipped, she thinks like she's the, or he thinks he's the king of the whole household, but we don't. And then the biblical teaches that the main problem of the world is sin. That's the main problem. That's why we have so many wars. That's why we have so much sickness and you know, fighting and hatred and all that stuff. And then it disrupts relationships between people and also with creation and with God. Christianity also teaches that spirit beings such as angels are not tied to the natural world. We don't worship them. All right, so that concludes our discussion on the Yamato period. Tomorrow we will be discussing another period in Japan. And I hope you guys have a great day. Remember, there's not going to be class on Friday or Monday because that's going to be your Easter break. And then I'll have your lesson ready for Tuesday. All right, Caleb, have a great birthday. I miss all of you. I hope you are having fun despite being quarantined with each other. I had fun talking to all of you on Zoom, and hopefully we'll get that situated for those of you who missed it. I'm sorry about that, and I hope you're making good choices.